Hello everyone, I hope your day is going incredible. Before we even begin to talk about Elden Ring's most tragic character, I wanted to say thank you. Thank you so much for 2,000 subscribers. It truly means the world to me. Well, more than the world. Anyways, enough of my soppy rambling. I hope you do enjoy the video. If you do, please consider leaving a like and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. Every story has its beginning. No matter what it is, it has a beginning. And our beginning today starts with gold. More specifically, Marika the Eternal and Godfrey, first Elden Lord. Marika and Godfrey were bound by marriage, and from this marriage came two children, twins to be precise, Mohg and Morgott. Except these children weren't born the ordinary demigod. No, these children were born ill-omened, born with the malformed horns of the crucible, their stumps growing as time passed. Hearing this for the first time, probably something that most people thought was, it's just some deformities, how bad could that be? Well, you see, while it's not necessarily bad, perspective is everything. And to the adherents of the Golden Order, anything related to the primordial crucible and the Great Tree was seen as impure, and thus the ill omens were sent underground, deep, deep under the capital. That wasn't all the omens though, no. Some suffered an even worse fate. Some were forced into slavery to fight the battles of the Golden Order. Others were sent to the slaughterhouse by the apathetic omen hunters who slaughtered the omens, men, women and children. Their acts were so heinous that they had to take potions to numb their emotions to coldness. It wasn't just the omens that suffered this fate. It was also the misbegottens and the crucible knights. But they are a topic for a different video. Our topic for this video leads us back to the demigod omen twins. Soon after their birth, after seeing their deformities, a decision must have been made. This decision led to Mohg and Morgott being shackled down in the depths of the capital. But omen or not, they were still powerful beings. They were still the children of a god. And so, unlike other omens, these two had special chains created for them, bound by their own power. This shackled them for an untold amount of time. And while we do know that they survived, and eventually escaped, given the fact we fight them later in the game, we do know that untold horrors were bestowed upon them. And while we do know that Morgott eventually forgave the Golden Order, fighting under different aliases for the Golden Order, and eventually even becoming the last king of the Golden Capital, something you might be thinking now though is, what about Mohg? Well, let me tell you, he is the protagonist of this story. Mohg never forgave the Golden Order for the torture he suffered. Instead, he found a new path, a new calling. He found this calling in the formless mother, who reached into the recesses of his mind deep in the dark, and from this darkness came blood incantations and blood flame. It's with this power that I believe that Mohg broke free from his shackles and found his new path, his new desire, his desire to start the Mohgwyn dynasty, and so he did, slowly building in power. We don't know how long this took, but given we are told multiple times that Morgott and his demigod siblings are eons old, we can safely say that this was not a short process. This probably took millennia at least. But you see, Mohg knew, or perhaps the formless mother whispering in his ear knew, the demographic and the target audience that he needed to strive for if he was going to build his army. He went for the ones that were on the brink of madness. He brought people to madness. He became the madness, and all those driven to insanity were drawn to him, leading to what we find today. And while it's easy to prosecute him and accuse him of these sins, we do not know the effects the formless mother had on his mind, or the effects that his powers brought upon him, not to mention the torture bestowed upon him for an untold amount of time. Trauma is a really hard and difficult thing that pops up time and time again in Elden Ring's lore, and Mohg is no exception. In fact, he's one of the biggest candidates and the biggest examples of it. Something I briefly talked about in my video on the lost souls of the Bloodstar was that I theorised that perhaps the Formless Mother and the Bloodstar may be one in the same, or they may have some kind of pact or work together, and considering both their subordinates have pretty identical powers using blood incantations and blood sorceries, it really pairs the two together. But do you want to know something that really seals the deal? The Bloodstar and the Formless Mother both prey on the minds of the misfortuned. Mohg, after having been tortured his entire life, was shown kindness to for the first time by the outer god known as the Formless Mother, who preyed into the recesses of his mind and manipulated him into the person we see today. And in a similar sense, the Briars of Sin, as that's what I've taken to calling them because we don't have an official name for their group to all the people who said it in the last video, after being persecuted for some unknown sin, they were pierced through the eyes by crowns of thorns. These crowns of thorns blinded them, and in the darkness, just like how Mohg found the Formless Mother in the darkness, they found the Bloodstar. It sounds very, very similar. From Software is no stranger to making one being seem like two. Example being Boletaria. Both the Intelligence sect and the Faith sect opposed each other, yet in true From Software fashion, this was a trick of the light, and in fact, both their gods were one in the same. Both their worships drew from the same power. Is it too far-fetched to think that perhaps the Bloodstar and the Formless Mother are one in the same? After all, they do torture already tortured souls, bringing them to madness untold. One of the reasons people accuse Mohg of being this evil and vile person is due to his part in Miquella's abduction. But after making the Miquella is the true villain video and seeing all the comments, one stood out to me. What if this was all part of Miquella's plan? We know Miquella has the ability to use unalloyed gold incantations to manipulate the minds of his subordinates. Why not Mohg? It would make so much sense given how devoted Mohg is to him. If this is true, this adds so much to Mohg's character. After years of being tortured, he was supposedly, quote unquote, saved by the Formless Mother. And then, untold years later, Miquella comes along and is just like, oh yeah mate, you're mine now, and uses his unalloyed gold incantations on him, abducting his mind in a sense. In basically every single description, it states that Mohg kidnapped Miquella. But if you look at it from this perspective, it was Miquella who kidnapped Mohg, just not in the physical sense, but in the psychological sense. And you want to know something that is just as sad? Godfrey. We know that Godfrey did not want this. If you look at it, what choice did he have? Who is he to fight against a god? And at the foot of the Erd tree, he expresses this guilt, this anguish, this sorrow through the scream of his loyal companion Serosh. How could he ever fight the decision of Marika? He couldn't. And so, presumably not long after the war was finished, he was banished across the Badlands to return one day. And originally we thought the reason Godfrey was banished was so that eons later he could return and he could fight for the Elden Ring. But what if this wasn't the case? What if the reason he was actually banished was the fact that Marika knew if she did not banish him, Godfrey would do anything for his children, no matter what it might be. And given his strength and the amount of loyal followers he commanded, it's no surprise Marika feared this and, in turn, banished him. Until the day he would return, a broken man, a shell of the former Elden Lord. In conclusion, Elden Ring is home to a vast variety of tragic characters. Almost every character has some kind of tragic backstory. But for me at least, Mohg takes the cake. And while most might think that Morgott had an equally as tragic life, this isn't the case. You've got to think, Morgott's torture ended mostly when he left, while Mohg's suffered until we killed him. Perhaps in death he can find his father that misses him so dearly. Perhaps in death he can find his brother. And perhaps in death he can find the peace that was robbed of him in life. Sadly everyone, that is the end of the video. If you did enjoy, please consider leaving a like and subscribe as it greatly helps the channel. If you are liking this style of content, then please let me know down below. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. And yeah, thank you so much for 2,000 subscribers, and may you find your worth in the waking world. Goodbye everyone.